Hi, this is Jill with PhocusWire here at the Phocuswright conference in Amsterdam. Our next guest at the studio today is Alex Saint with Secret Escapes. Thank you for being here, Alex.
It's a pleasure.
So you just got off the main stage talking about your company and how you've grown and things like that. And one of the things you mentioned was that you take a scientific approach to startups, and that's kind of how you've been able to build your business. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, so I think fundamentally what we're really talking about is that when we create a feature, we do it in the quickest possible way, and it's very much an MVP type environment, and everything we do where it's possible we put it into test. So we run everything like a science experiment. So we create a new feature and we'll run a proportion of the traffic through the original feature and a proportion of the traffic through the new feature, and we'll record which delivers the better results. So that's kind of classic A/B test type approach. But then more broadly, I think we just have a philosophy which has an aversion to gut feel. Wherever we've got data, we will use data. And that's not to say that gut feel isn't important, because it sometimes informs the very beginning of a hypothesis. But we won't put something into test on the basis that somebody ships up one day and says, hey, I've had this great idea in the shower. Well, okay, so you've had this great idea in the shower. What evidence have you got to suggest that that might be a good idea? What's the reasoning behind that? Okay, great. So you can convince us that logically this sounds like a great idea. Now let's figure out how we can test it. So it's that kind of approach, and what it means is, and it's certainly the MVP part of that, means that you don't waste too much time building huge, great big cathedrals and you don't know whether or not people are going to worship them.
Yeah. That's sort of like a small steps.
Yeah, because I think the cardinal sin, particularly for startups, has got to be having this kind of religious view about. I think it's really important to have a vision of where you want to get to, but the how about how you get there should have an element of flexibility. And so the features through which you deliver that, you need to be flexible about. You need to be open-minded to the fact that the first way you thought we might get there may well not be the right way. And if you burn through all of your funding developing the one way, and you find it doesn't work, then you're done. So that's the kind of, for me, is the key, and it's why it's so important for startup businesses to use that kind of methodology.
Yeah. So looking at your approach and how you've taken with it, what is maybe a scientific approach to something that you took and it didn't work out the way you thought, or something that just sort of you went in thinking one thing and then came out thinking something else, or realizing something else?
Yeah. So, I guess we've had a bunch of failed A/B tests. Very few really counterintuitive results. The one I mentioned earlier on actually was when we tested. I'm still confused as to why when you add a flight to a hotel, you get a greater length of stay,
right.
Because the consumer's only going to do the same thing. They've still got to get there. So I'm still a bit confused about that. We've had some surprises around payment methods and things which you'd think would be intuitive. Things that increase the cost. We've had one or two instances where actually loading in a payment cost has actually increased conversion for those kind of odd. They're real oddities, and they're not the kind of things really that we're looking for. You kind of when you add in an incremental cost, you're expecting it to damage conversion, but the sum of the parts still to be worth more. But yeah, so with the odd surprise, but very rarely, I guess probably because most of the hypotheses are pretty well thought through.
Yeah.
Very rarely do you get taken totally by surprise.
That's good to know. So your members that use the platform, or product rather, some of them are looking at it generationally. Some of them are growing. Millennials are growing up, for example, now taking their families on vacation and things like that. How have you seen user behavior evolve, or what do you see around that?
So I guess what we've always seen, I think, three distinct groups in our demographic. So you've got I guess what are characterised as the 25 to 35, so pre-children couples. They behave in one way. Then you've got the families with dependent children, and then you've got people who I guess are kind of starting from about 45 who are post-children couples. And what you see in the latter group is people with masses of flexibility, plenty of disposable income, and increasing amounts of time. And so these guys tend to be our heavy users.
Okay.
Then you've got the pre-children couples, who I imagine, although I haven't checked for a while, but I would imagine their travel would be more characterized by urban short breaks than it would be by country house spa type breaks and long haul holidays. And then in the middle you've got this group who've got dependent children and who have to make plans a long way in advance. They tend to be the lighter users because the business doesn't necessarily yet lend itself to complete flexibility around school holidays and family rooms and so on. It's more complex.
Because they have to plan further in advance.
They have to plan a lot further in advance.
They have
and typically hoteliers are not, in school holidays, hoteliers are not discounting family rooms.
Right.
So there's that. But that's not to say that if you're a 40-year-old couple with young kids, that you don't need a weekend breakaway when the grandparents are looking after the kids.
Right.
So it works for everybody, but I would say the heavy users are really the 45 plus with the time, the money, and the flexibility to be able to take an awful lot of holidays.
Okay. And have you noticed more of them doing it on mobile or taking it to their phones, or how have you sort of seen that?
So mobile usage is really very heavyweight across the groups. Again, I haven't looked at the numbers for a while, but I think you'd see conversion rates on mobile higher in the younger age groups. But I think actual mobile usage, particularly the early stages of the process where you're responding to an email and you're clicking through to the site, so many people, regardless of age, are doing that on their mobile first thing in the morning. They see the email, on your way to work. It's a lovely bit of escapism. It doesn't matter whether you're interested.
Don't have to think about the rest of the emails.
Yeah, exactly. And people, our users tell us that it doesn't matter whether they're interested in buying or not. They love clicking through on the email, having a look at some beautiful travel imagery, thinking about going on holiday, and then, at some point, something we send them will spur them into buying. So mobile has a really important role to play, particularly in the early part of the journey for us. You're still looking at quite high value purchases, and a lot of those get made ultimately on the desktop because it's a better environment right now still for looking at.
Their confidence is there too.
Yeah, confidence is there. You've got a lot of imagery. That's, it's great. It is, I think, definitely, you can't argue about the fact that it is better to look at 12 quite detailed hotel shots on a desktop monitor compared to on a small screen. So that's, a lot of people do end up converting on desktop, but an increasing amount of our other traffic, other than the very final part of the process, is on mobile.
So with that, also, people, you did talk to on the stage about how somebody should invent the inspiration platform, or you can search inspiration and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that makes me think of Instagram, for example, because that's obviously where people are getting a lot of sparks and inspiration. Has Secret Escapes utilized like how do you sort of use that social element that people are they're going to be on there anyway?
Yeah, sure. So Instagram is definitely one of our channels. It's not one of our bigger social channels. Facebook is we have millions of followers on Facebook, but I think ultimately that image-led inspiration is a real lever for us, because ultimately a lot of what sells our properties is are the beautiful images, and so Instagram really obviously lends itself to that. I'm not sure we're leveraging it yet quite as hard as we could do, but social's definitely is a strong medium for us.
All right, well, I think we're up on time here, so thank you.
Thank you very much.